I'm Amelia Kincaid, and I starred in a series of wild, nasty, crazy horror movies that I really didn't think anybody would ever watch. And now I can't say it's 25 years later because, being that I'm only in my late 20s, that much time couldn't possibly have passed. But I starred in 3 movies called Night of the Demons. And I was actually the demon of Night of the Demons. Yes, hard to believe, I know. But apparently I was quite scary because this cult following has continued. Now not only are people coming to me saying I was their mother's favorite actress, pretty soon they're going to be saying I was their grandmother's favorite actress. This could be going a little bit too far. I was in Hollywood in the early 80s, and I had the incredible honor of working as a professional jazz dancer, being a backup dancer for Donna Summer, Cher, Smokey Robinson, did a rock video for Sheena Easton. I think my famous rock video was for the Stray Cats. And I once even sang on the piano bench of Ray Charles. Being that I dance but don't sing, I always said I was the only woman in history that I'm sure he wished he was deaf instead of blind. I didn't say that, but that's okay, because the people who are watching this all have a wonderful sense of humor. So I was in Hollywood dancing and started acting because my aunt, Rue McClanahan of the Golden Girls, was really encouraging me to be an actress. And I got this audition for this bizarre, crazy role where they asked me to be scary. So when I auditioned, I remember trying to scare the casting director. And rather than, do it like this, I did it like this. Oh, darling, I guess I'm going to have to kill you now. Oh, delicious. And it worked. For some reason, Cedric Gabriel gave me the role of Angela in the first Night of the Demons. Nothing could have shocked me more than to have a second movie for me and then a third movie for me. So I got to possess and kill 2 more casts of unsuspecting partygoers. And the night is young. The night is young. What can I say? When I auditioned for Angela, my highest hope was that they would let me choreograph my own dance scene. This was shortly after the Flashdance era. Had I come to Hollywood a tiny bit sooner, I probably would have gotten Maureen Jahan's role, dancing in Flashdance. When I did come in, it was a magical time to be a dancer in Hollywood. We were trained in professional ballet companies, and I was trained as a modern dancer. I graduated from Interlochen Arts Academy, and it was hardcore dance training. So when I was given the opportunity to do anything I wanted, I went, oh, not only am I going to be able to be as outrageous as I possibly can and get away with it, I'm going to be able to dance as wild as I want, which I did. But I was just doing that every night anyway around my living room. That's just what I did every night. Oh my God, what was it like working with Kevin Tenney? Kevin is a funny person, and it's really nice to be with somebody who's smart and funny and also gave me a lot of free rein. Kevin would let me do pretty much anything I wanted, and we collaborated really beautifully. There was a lot of humor in the script and in Kevin's approach to directing. So allowing it to be funny, allowing us to improvise, in retrospect I can see, was the real winning element of this film. I've studied comedy improv and was in a comedy improv troupe since I made that movie. And now I realize how much being an improv actor really contributed to the success of the film. Had we had a cast of kids who couldn't improvise, I, I don't think we would have had the film that we had. Of the entire cast, I've got to say that Philip Tanzini was my favorite of the cast members because he was flat out hilarious. We did some naughty things that are now illegal, and we got away with it back then, back when making movies in Hollywood was still fun. I don't know if I'll get all these details right, but at one point, Philip Tanzini was missing his arm. So he had a bloody stump that was spewing blood. Now, in these days and times, you're not allowed to drive through McDonald's or Burger King where you're going to pull up and have a bloody stump spewing blood. But of course, that's exactly what Philip Tanzini did. And it was just so much fun to have a cast that was playing practical jokes. So I think of the entire group, Phil was my favorite because he was the funniest. Hull House was this old, amazing mansion in downtown Los Angeles, a part of town that used to be very glamorous old Hollywood. And it was a rickety, falling down, a perfect venue to be a haunted house. It was scary. It was scary to shoot there. We were shooting all night. And it helped to be in a house that actually was probably full of ghosts and had its own history. The Night of the Demons makeup was a living hell. So it took at least 6 hours, between 5 and 6 hours, to get on the possession makeup. Now that's only to get it on. It took an hour and a half to get it off. And after we shot all night, for them to be peeling these prosthetics off me, oh my goodness, it was miserable. And then in the second film, I think I still hold the world's record. I made a record in Hollywood for being in possession makeup the longest. So there's a scene where I'm turned into a 30-foot snake. Now you gotta understand, this is before CGI. We didn't know what CGI was. So when they said, okay, Mimi, we're gonna glue you to a teeter-totter, and we're gonna tie you into a trench, and put makeup on you so that you look like Kermit the Frog, and you have 2 contacts in each eyes, and 6 sets of fangs. The kiss is another fabulous story. That was 5 sets of tongues that are pineapple flavored, sitting in an ice chest that I'd roll up in my mouth, fill my mouth with cherry blood, and then kiss the guy and blast his brains out the back of his head. Oops. But the snake makeup, that's 27 hours in a trench, made up like a python. So the makeup was intense. And I know now that if I hadn't been trained as a ballerina, I never could have gotten through that. I mean, I was coming from Interlochen Arts Academy, where halfway through the Nutcracker rehearsal, you take your pointe shoes off, you pour out the blood, and you put them back on, and you continue to rehearse. So coming from that world, we didn't really question how uncomfortable that makeup was. It was miserable. Okay, so nothing could have been more miserable than 6 hours in prosthetics, except 6 hours in prosthetics and then half your body gets burned off. So that was absolutely, utterly, unbearably miserable. And I was gooey and slimy and red and looked like I'd been spending a lot of time in hell. And it's real easy to act possessed when you're so incredibly unhappy. And I think all of us were so unhappy in that makeup. Oh, Lord. But I will tell you this. The opening scene where you know, right before my dance in Demons 1, where you know for the first time that something's a little bit wrong with me. Steve Johnson had put this gel on my fingers, and he said, okay, this is going to burn for 6 seconds before it burns through to your skin. So just put your hands in this huge vat of ice water after 6 seconds. So I had to time this perfectly so that when I turned around and said, I was just warming my hands over the fire, and I'm counting 5, 6, then the hands had to go into the ice water, or my fingers would have burned off. This was the 80s. This was the fun of movie making in the 80s. For me, in all of the demon films, the makeup got to be pretty hairy. At one point, I actually tried to go to work, and they said, we can't make up over open wounds where my skin is bleeding. So the possession scenes were hard. I had fangs that made my gums bleed. I had makeup that made my skin rip. And none of that was very entertaining. So the film was not easy to make. And we didn't think anything of it at the time. We just thought, well, we're actors and this is what a film's supposed to be. Well, you know, the fun of working in smoke. I've been a rock video queen for quite a while, so I was used to this huge cloud of blue stinking smoke that you had to try to operate through. But at one point, Kevin Tenney said to the cast, do you think there's enough smoke? And Philip Tanzini put his finger up his nose, pulled his finger out, and it was bright blue. And Philip said, yeah, I think so. The lesbian kiss with Linnea Quigley was one of the highlights of my life. I'm hoping to reenact it within the next year. Linnea and I are doing a lot of these conventions together now, where we try to go together as often as we can to these movie conventions and greet fans and sign autographs. Fortunately for me, Linnea was lovely and she had really good breath. You know, I can't do the demon voice. When I do these conventions, we'll have contests to see who can do my demon voice. But in the scene where I'm saying, run, Judy, run, the only thing that's not real is that the voice is not mine. When we did the floating, this came out of Kevin Tenney's brilliant imagination. He put me on roller skates. And the reason that it's so scary is because I'm rolling down a hallway. And I also was a little bit out of control, being that I'm not a great roller skater. And the skates are under this huge wedding dress, so you can't tell that I'm on roller skates. But that's why the scene is so scary. When the first Demons came out, it was shown in Mann's Chinese Theater, which is the most prestigious theater in Hollywood. In the history of Hollywood. This is where all the old movie stars walk the red carpet to watch all the old colossal hits shown for the first time. It was so flattering and such a surprise. I only recently started making appearances at horror movie conventions. My real life's work is with animals and fighting for their rights, for people to understand that they're thinking, feeling beings. And I've written some books that are now published around the world. So for a while, I put this on hold until I started getting fan letters from people saying, we watched Night of the Demons 11 times last night because they're smoking crack. I don't know. But we got your new book and we have a new Dalmatian puppy and my wife's pregnant and we don't know how to introduce the dog to the baby and will the baby be safe? There was this huge crossover between my horror movie fans and my animal loving fans. And I realized that this wasn't something that I needed to be ashamed of anymore. And now that I've done some of these conventions, at one convention, 4 guys in their early 20s came up to me with tattoos of me on their bodies. 2 guys tats on their chest, 2 guys tats on their thigh. I made them drop trowel and show it to me. And I'm saying, what are you going to tell your wife? What are you going to tell your children? Nothing else, just a tattoo of Angela on his chest. And I'm now questioning these fans, saying, why did these movies make such an impression on you? And I think that it was a very special time in filmmaking where we were still allowed to be very creative, hands-on, innovative, improvising, bringing humor. And as I said before, when a director says, okay, now you're possessed, act possessed, what does that mean? Well, if a director says, okay, now you get possessed and kill him. Get possessed and kill him, and nothing else was in the script. Angela gets possessed and kills him. So that was for me to be able to be incredibly creative as an actress. And I only now understanding you can't be scary without being really creative. One fan came up to me, this was my most touching moment. A fan came up to me who was a Marine, and he'd just gotten back from the war in Iraq. He said they were allowed to take one film with them for 2 years, and he took Night of the Demons. Unbelievable. When I go to these conventions, and thousands of horror movie fans come through the doors that have driven for not hours, days to come meet me. And I ask them, what on earth is it about this movie? What is it about this character that made such an impression on you? It hasn't been easy for me to understand. And one of my fans only recently said that I protected him as a child when he didn't have anything else. And this is what I'm beginning to understand, that Angela is the protector and the spokesperson for the underdog, for all the nerdy little goth kids who didn't make cheerleader and aren't on the football squad and grow up to be, God willing, an animator or a rock star or an author and animal rights activist and an animal communicator or a graphic designer or anything that was not mainstream when they were a child. Angela is the spokesperson. Let me see if I can figure out something to say. Oh my God. I spent a few years trying to get away from this movie and this series of movies because I was trying to be taken seriously as an author and as an animal activist and animal lover. And now what I've begun to realize, only because a fan said to me, when I said, why on earth do you love these movies so much? He said, because you humanize the demons. You're humanizing demons. And that's why you're now working with tigers and great white sharks and snakes. I work with a lot of predators. And to be able to look at their behavior, and now in particular tigers, these scratches I'm wearing so proudly for a very short amount of time because they came from two-week-old tiger cubs here in gorgeous Johannesburg, South Africa, if you haven't noticed. I'm sitting poolside. And these tiger cubs would have been hand-reared so that they're tame, They were already taken from their mother at 2 weeks old. And once they've been hand-reared so that they trust humans, some demonic person will fly from a different part of the world, come down here and spend $500,000 to murder their very own tiger. And then once the tiger's shot, they'll chop his head off and mail it home and hang it over their pool table in Texas. So rather than being afraid of the tigers, I think the real evil lies with people that are killing these tigers and lions and rhinos and sharks. And perhaps my fan is right, that I'm looking at some of the violent behavior that animals are capable of with a little bit of humor and tenderness, fondness even. Now these 2 tiger cubs are safe. They've been rescued and they're going to live in a wonderful sanctuary here in Africa for the rest of their lives. But someone's got to have the courage to step in and negotiate some of these really wild, uncomfortable situations. And now I'm beginning to see the bridge between the work that I was doing and the work that I'm doing now.